All right, Rebecca, take it away.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have with us this morning Daron Larson. He is a mindfulness coach and lives in Columbus, Ohio. He uses what people already know about physical fitness, sorry, Kim, to help them navigate the challenges of mindfulness practice. Daron has been practicing mindfulness daily for nearly 18 years, and he's contributed brain scans to research projects at Harvard Medical School and the University of Vermont, looking at long-term meditators. As a parent, social worker, librarian, and host of the Art of Attention podcast, Daron is energized by identifying resources to help people navigate their personal and professional challenges more effectively. I'm really excited to have him here with us today. I had the privilege of hearing him last week, and as soon as I did, I was like, oh, I want him for my people. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And Daron, let's hand it over to you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the invitation. Such an easy commute from Ohio to South Carolina today, just down a few stairs. But I do think I'm really loving being able to reach more people through all these online platforms like Zoom. I do wish we were in person so I could see your faces and things, and I encourage any level of participation or engagement that you feel comfortable with. And there'll be some places along the way I might prompt you to either share something through the chat box or to speak up, and certainly don't hesitate to ask questions. I want this to be relevant. I want this to be engaging and interesting. So I've been to tons of presentations, so I'm going to bring my best game to this. So hopefully you're curious and interested and are willing to play along. And for those of you who have like a negative connotation with fitness, yeah, I get that. But I'm trying to get around a different negative connotation, which is the hippie vibe that's out there. And the mindfulness tends to come in one flavor, one West Coast beach incense flavor. And that's not the approach I'm advocating. So I use physical exercise as a way to kind of, as a better parallel for me of what we're up against. So I hope that starts to make sense. We'll check in, Kim, to see what you think as we go. But in general, I'll start by saying that, well, number one, I'm not a naturally calm person. In fact, I wouldn't call myself calm. I'd say I'm someone who feels his feelings strongly. I'm very interested and curious and easily stimulated. So I don't practice mindfulness because it comes naturally. I practice because I really experience the benefits of being able to have a different kind of self-awareness and a different level of emotional regulation than I really ever thought possible. And that's after working in the field of social work and mental health for 10 years. I have discovered things that are not what I hear in the marketing of mindfulness, but actually in the lived experience are shockingly empowering and robust and rigorous and leads to vitality, not the numbed out, blissed out thing we typically think about. So let's start by saying what makes mindfulness so popular right now as a theme, I think, is this level of uncertainty we're living in now and for the foreseeable future. And I think it's an opportunity to actually highlight this approach to mindfulness. It's not just about, certainly it can be about getting better at relaxing and calming down. That's just part of the story, though. And I personally have never been benefited by someone suggest that I calm down or telling me to relax or telling me to let something go. Those have never been useful instructions for me. I've never experienced that working. But I have experienced this idea of developing capacities that make it more possible for me to do that or to engage differently in things that are uncomfortable for me. So what we're going to do is kind of talk about this practical approach to mindfulness that I call attentional fitness. And I'll describe how you can exercise your attention. And then also I want to hit on some of this idea of this being so much more about resilience and maybe even emotional agility than it is about trying to chill out. If you want to get extra credit today, I'm going to give you a challenge. If you have a timer that you can set for 20 minutes, I suggest putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, expanding your screen to take your whole screen, so you don't see all the tabs maybe that you have open, and see if for 20 minutes you can find a way to stay like, I don't know, 75% engaged in what I'm saying without checking email, sending email, that kind of stuff. Just a little bonus. And it's actually an example of what I'm talking about. What's it like to set a realistic duration of time to decide what to notice and what to allow to be in the background? This is a very practical application, so we can just jump right in if you'd like. It's your choice. So what's this practical mindfulness I'm talking about? Let's start by saying that I want to make an argument that you're already mindful. That this is a weird term that's being marketed in very specific ways now, but really what makes it so hard to talk about is it's so deeply human and natural that we don't remember that we are already mindful. So meaning everyone has a base level of mindfulness that you're starting from. And it's probably better than you give yourself credit for, because I go to the parking garage and I get these signs saying, be mindful of your keys, be mindful of this, be mindful of that, which that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about never forget stuff. I'm not talking about being perfect. I'm not talking about never getting upset. I'm talking about remembering that you have the capacity to shift your awareness at any given moment. The challenge is, all I'm talking about here is adults tend to go through the day with our attention really strongly anchored in our imagination, because we're thinking and we're planning and we're problem solving and we're making decisions, and all of that is, I have no problem with any of it. I love all that. I love all that stuff. So those things are not my enemy, and they're not an enemy to mindfulness. The problem is, we've got, at the same time our attention is in our imagination, we've got all this sensory data that we're swimming in, things we can see, things we can hear around us, sensations in our body, physical, emotional, active, restful. All these sensations kind of hang out unobserved in the background of our awareness, and we miss a lot of richness in the ordinary, and we also forget that we can toggle our attention on purpose at any given moment. We can actually practice that and get better at remembering to do it. When we start to make that a habit, it really sets the stage for some interesting stuff. But I'm going to prove you're mindful already. See if you can feel your legs, meaning bring your attention to your legs and literally feel them. There's no hidden trick. There's no agenda here. What's it like to feel the sensations of your legs? And notice your face. And I'm suggesting that you notice for a handful of seconds. More than 0 seconds is excellent. 2, 3, 4 is really excellent, and you don't really need to shoot for more than 3 or 4 seconds. Notice if the temperature in the room you're in. Notice if there's any sounds in your environment. What's it like to listen to one sound closely for 2 or 3 seconds? And notice if you're hungry or full. Are you alert, or are you feeling kind of sluggish, or somewhere in between? Like, we're just taking a data sample of sensation, of perception. Is there an emotion that's impacting? Are you finding that you're curious and interested, or are you bored, confused, or even agitated? Here's an example of when we start to notice what agitation feels like, we start to get better able to respond to the pull of email when we're working on a project, for example, right? Yeah, that's good. You got the idea. So that, to me, the ability to shift your attention away from your imagination without making thoughts and feelings some kind of enemy, but being able to decide when to shift your attention is really what we're talking about. Now, it might look something like this to cultivate it, but it absolutely does not have to look like this. Doesn't have to. Mindfulness, if you're in the grocery store, it's on the magazine cover at the checkout line. Back when we used to go to the grocery, well, I guess we still do go, just not as often, right? And I guess there's still mindfulness magazines in the grocery store. But the books in the bookstore, all the mindfulness stuff, and even the apps, some of the apps are called things like Calm. It's got this vibe that you have to sit in a specific posture. You have to be a flexible, wealthy white woman maybe in California with expensive pillows and maybe some incense. And it helps if you have a cat and some yogurt for some reason. And you have to run marathons and things. I want to get rid of this image, partly because it's very misleading. It's selling this idea of mindfulness looks like this, or even relaxation looks like this. And what happens is all the benefits of mindfulness are touted. You're going to have less stress. You're going to have more relaxation. There's all kinds of things that will happen, right? Then when you go to exercise, to do an exercise, to pay attention, you pick some sensation to notice and stay with it for a few seconds or a few minutes. You find out very quickly it might not be relaxing at all. And the problem is, exercising your attention does not always feel like what the result is going to be. Just like if I go to the gym to get stronger, if I lift weights, while I'm lifting weights, I don't necessarily feel stronger. In fact, as I do enough repetitions, I feel fatigued. But I understand that to get stronger means fatiguing something, means challenging something. So when we're exercising our attention, we have to think about, there's a possibility I might feel more grounded and relaxed during this session, but there's also the possibility that I could feel really scattered. My attention could be everywhere, and I'm still doing it correctly. I'm still getting a benefit, but that benefit might be something that appears later. Just like when I'm in the gym thinking, what's the point of this? It's not comfortable when it's sweaty and it takes time away. But then I start to notice I have more energy. I'm taking the stairs a little easier. I'm sleeping a little better. So the benefits start to bubble up as a result of the exercise. We don't get those benefits if we don't exercise, and we don't exercise if we misinterpret our experience of what it's like to exercise. So my argument is, and this is why I'm doing this, I feel compelled to share this stuff. I'm convinced everyone who tries mindfulness and gives up, they think they were doing it wrong. They think it's not for them. They think it's completely inaccessible to them. And they were actually, I guarantee you, they were doing it right and misinterpreting their experience. So I want to try to reduce the possibility of the odds of that happening, of people giving up. And also, it doesn't have to look like you're in some kind of spiritual position. This, to me, this person could be practicing mindfulness, and we don't have any clues that that's happening. This is what makes it hard to illustrate it out there in the world, is when you really come down to it, trying to catch someone being mindful just looks like a person in the world. So this guy could be deciding to hear the sounds around him, to feel sensations in his body, to see what's happening in front of his eyes. He could have shifted his attention away from whatever problem he was thinking about to notice his surroundings, notice his body, and we have no way of knowing this. Makes it a challenge. The other thing is that I think gets in the way is we talk about being present. Be more in the present, right? But we don't talk enough about how the present is really a moving target, and the challenge level really varies. What are we talking about? That's an abstraction, to be in the present. But we're going to talk a little bit about how what I think of this, but just keeping in mind that trying to be present, trying to notice what's ever happening is going to be different if it's the evening or it's so funny as I'm giving these talks now, I have to modify for the way we're living. I'm catching myself as I'm saying something. So I don't know next time we're going to be walking on a beach. But you get the idea. There's work, and then there's evening, weekend, vacation. And being present as I'm walking on a beach on vacation is going to feel different than being present when I'm stuck in traffic. But I am of the mind that it's really valuable to consider getting better at both of those things. Not just to get better at relaxing, because that starts to become a habit of just avoiding or escaping life, and I'm interested in more of an engagement with the messiness of life. Now, it feels right now that mindfulness is a fad because it's talked about everywhere, but I think the reality is more complicated. Part of the reality is that research, neuroscience research, only started in the late 70s. into mindfulness, and it's exploded in like the last decade. So there's mounting evidence about something that's happening in the brain that's actually observable, right? And I think they're just beginning to get this, right? Back to the idea, we can't tell that the guy is practicing mindfulness who's standing in the lobby. We can't tell. If I show you a before and after picture of when I first started a daily practice to now, I look the same, just a little older. There's no evidence that my subjective experience has basically transformed. But if you ask the people close to me, they can tell you. And I can tell you, but it's just hard because it's my subjectivity that's changed. But I think why this is more than a fad, if you think about how we haven't been aware of the need to exercise our bodies for really that long, or we haven't necessarily gone running around the neighborhood, right, or going to gyms. This is something like in the 70s and 80s, 25 million people started jogging, including celebrities. The president jogged, you know, Jimmy Carter was on, made the news because he was jogging. And when it started out, the early adopters seemed odd. They have the special uniform they wear, and they have like a little terry cloth headband, and why are you doing this, right? But why were they doing it? I think because we realized as a culture that our lives had become more sedentary. We were doing more work with our minds, less work with our body, and starting to show up in our bodies, right? And what I also love about this comparison is that even given all the scientific evidence, and all of us know exercise is good for us, I rarely talk to anyone who says that they're exercising as much as they feel like they want to, right? So is it more science that we need, or is it complicated because it's both I think it's both an art and a science. I know that there's a relationship. If I move my body more, I'll feel better. But the art is, how am I going to trick myself into doing that? How am I going to get myself to get some more steps in? What exercises am I willing to do? Can I walk my dog, take a longer walk with my dog? Or do I sign up for, you know, an exercise class, or do I join a gym? It's really going to be customizable to the person. So my argument is the real reason mindfulness is taking off is because, once again, our culture has changed in a drastic way that's impacting everyone, and that is the demands on our attention. The demands on our attention, the demands to be on. I find it fascinating, even this working from home. I feel like I know for me and other people, those of us who are lucky enough to be working from home, I'm working more. There's more demands on my attention than ever, and how to navigate things like, what do I look on what, how do I engage my attention when I'm on a Zoom meeting, or when I'm on a conference call, or when I'm trying to do a task? How do I adjust my expectations when my household is really chaotic, or I've got kids? I've got to set realistic expectations. But even apart from this current moment, there's this constant pull from advertisers, emails, news, right, politicians. And it's not neutral. I think about the library here. Is it really information overload that we're talking about? Because when I was a kid and I would go to the library, I never felt information overload. That place is just packed with information. But I was like a kid in the candy store there. This is different. Those library books, those books did not insist on my attention. I had to go find them. I had to discover things in a card catalog accidentally. Now, it's this demand. My attention is a limited resource that people are competing for, and it's a very profitable endeavor. And they use emotion to hook me and keep me. So I think exercising our attention is valuable in response to this challenge. I don't want to just pay attention to what things demand it. I want to get better at deciding where to put my attention sometimes. So this is less about spa vacation and more about, how do I exercise my attention a little more? So I take this natural trainable capacity for being able to decide what to notice and to track ordinary sensations. I can develop that as a skill. What this starts to lead to is I'm going to savor pleasant moments more, depending on if that's part of what I'm investigating, and fight with unpleasant moments less. It's a really hard one to imagine because we don't have tons of good role models. We don't see this in action. What's it like to de-escalate yourself? or roll with discomfort instead of railing against it, right? And this is why I don't try to be happy all the time, or anything that's going to make a good title for a book that would make me a lot of money. I'm trying to feel more at home in my life regardless of the circumstances. I want to be more agile or flexible, to not be passive but be engaged, to roll with things, but not need conditions to be perfect. The real danger here is when we're constantly waiting for something to be more comfortable, right? We miss our real life while we're waiting for like this idealized version to come. So I think it helps to think about mindfulness then as not just one thing that's tidy and easy to summarize. So the standard definition from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who really launched the interest in mindfulness research, he says mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way. It's paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And this is a very, you're not supposed to do this, but I don't find that very helpful to just think about it in that simple definition, partly because this word non-judgmental really trips us up. So I think of it that it helps to think of it that it's two things. It's a capacity, for one, which we sort of are already kind of playing with. The ability to be present with whatever's happening with some degree of composure. The word acceptance is even becoming a little too much for me to say here. So you could say present with acceptance, but that seems like a cognitive thing that like let's say you have a boring meeting that you need to be at. I can be present. I can notice what's happening without saying I'm glad it's happening or that this meeting really needs to happen. I can be present and listen and engage and feel my reactions. And I can kind of hold it together. I can hold it together on the beach. I can hold it together in traffic. That's going to look different, but I have this ability, a really valuable ability. So we all have this base level capacity for noticing what's happening, kind of rolling with it. But we don't realize, I don't think, the degree to which that capacity could be elevated through exercise. And what exercising ends up looking like is just being able to notice sensations without trying to change them for a handful of seconds. So I kind of tricked you. You already did kind of an exercise. You were checking in on your capacity, but by bringing your attention to a sensation on purpose, just seeing or just hearing or just feeling, without trying to change it for a handful of seconds, you are exercising your attention. And that's going to feel different if you're noticing something's comfortable versus something uncomfortable. But the more we notice sensations in this way, without trying to change them, the more our capacity for being aware of the present and being able to hold on to some composure, that starts to increase. So it's like instead of waiting for the world to not trigger me, I'm starting to expand the scope of what I'm able to take in, if that makes any sense. For me personally, I think of this a lot of times in terms of the more intimately familiar I become with my emotional responses, then I don't need the world to not be provocative. I can still decide where to put my attention more. I want to pause here and say one research study that I think is really relevant and fascinating. There was a study done a couple years ago at Carnegie Mellon. They had three groups. They had 150 stressed out people, which I refer to as people. I want to contact them and say, now, could you find people who are not stressed out? Where would they be? Who are those people? So they say they have 150 stressed out people, randomly assigned to three groups. And they're going to give them an education over 2 weeks, 20 minutes a day through a phone-based app. One group learns coping skills. So the tips and things we're always hearing about, the Super Soul Sunday, the Oprah, Psychology Today, tips for living in magazines and newspapers, right? Or that kind of stuff. Second group is taught how to exercise their attention by noticing sensations. And the third group is taught to notice sensations with this emphasis on when you're noticing a sensation, just let it be as it is. So before this study, they took sample blood pressure, cortisol levels to check the level of stress. 2 weeks, 20 minutes a day. After the 2 weeks, they took a self-report. Everybody across the board on average said they felt less stress. But the only group with any kind of noticeable change in their body was this third group, noticing sensations without trying to change them. They had a 20% average drop in their blood pressure and a 50% drop in their cortisol. And why I love sharing this study so much is because they didn't figure out life. They didn't solve their problems. They didn't unwrap. You know, you can do all these things. We can do lots of, this isn't the only thing we're doing, but this shows a capacity that has being built. Something is changing in how I'm relating to my life as I'm living it, and my body's responding. It's not about solving riddles. So noticing sensations habitually in the way I'm describing starts to prepare us to respond to the challenges that we know are going to be inevitable in life. And we, instead of defaulting to our autopilot responses, our knee-jerk reaction, we're starting to set the stage of being able to respond with more skill, more awareness, more intention, right? Not because we're better people, but because, like, I'm not better because I did some push-ups. I just got a little stronger chest muscles. And it's not that we're better, it's just that we're better equipped to respond. So by default, as we go through life, we collect these habits. There's a stimulus and we have a response. I'm sad, Ben and Jerry's. Like, we learned somewhere that it helps to eat a little ice cream when my heart's broken. So pretty soon it's like, oh, what's this feeling? I don't even know. I'm just at the I'm at the freezer. Next thing you know, the pint's gone, or whatever your way of numbing. I always think that this is where I'm kind of screwed as this being a business, because it's really profitable to distract yourself away from whatever's happening through, smoking and drinking and ice cream and candy and all the things that we end up regretting, binge watching Netflix, right? And I'm suggesting that there's a really huge benefit in taking some of those things off autopilot, or at least observing them more closely to see if it's possible to start disrupting that automatic response and start recognizing that I could eat ice cream, or I could feel my emotions, or maybe I'll feel my emotions a little and then decide if I'm going to eat the ice cream. There's actually really fascinating research being done by Judd Brewer. He was at Yale, and I have something else coming up in my presentation about him, but this just occurred to me to mention here. He was at Yale doing research. Now he's at Brown School of Public Health, and he's in charge of mindfulness research, which is, that's a thing. The fact that that's a position now kind of blows my mind. He's developed 3 apps, one for smoking cessation, one for mindful eating, and one for anxiety. They all are based on this idea of not just trying to change the behavior, but starting to observe the behavior, the breaking the habit down into component parts, and including, like, say for example, with his smoking cessation app, it doesn't start by quit smoking. It starts by keep smoking, notice the craving, notice what it's like to smoke, notice the reward you get. And you're starting to break this down and observe yourself and start to recognize, is there something else? Do I even like smoking? Do I enjoy it, or am I just doing it on autopilot? And is there something else I could do in response to the craving? He's getting, his program is getting 5 times better than the gold standard used by the Lung Association. So people are paying attention. People are stopping smoking, and they quit? They stay stopped. They continue to not smoke for months after. So really interesting guy. He was actually my first guest on my podcast. So really interesting guy that I think everyone should have on their radar. So I'm going to start talking about how to exercise your attention. But I did notice a couple chat things. I don't know. You guys will let me know if there's anything, or we can save them towards the end. But feel free to interrupt me if needed.
Daron, we did have one question from Emily. She wanted you to go back and repeat your sentence about not letting the world trigger you and expanding your capacity.
Yeah, and actually I have a blog post about that, so that's fresh on my mind. It's a really important one to me. The idea is, instead of waiting for the world to not trigger me, right? It's what I think we're all kind of hoping that the world stops triggering. I wish people would not trigger my emotions, right? But I found it better to instead expand the scope of what I'm capable of feeling to include not just comfort, but also discomfort. When you start to do that, I can just say from experience and from the people I work with that I've discovered that it starts to be that it's not a cognitive shift, it starts to feel less personal. That instead of I'm an offended person or I'm an angry person or I'm a sad person, it starts to be like the experience opens up a little and it's more like, oh, I'm a person with the capacity for sadness. And yes, this is where it gets complicated, right? I still want to help make the world a better place. And there's lots of ways to address injustice. But I also don't want to just wait for the world to get sorted out and wait for, I don't think it's going to be useful at this point in history to wait for everyone to get on board with how I see the world. I want to also be prepared to recognize the humanity in people who disagree. I want to be angry, but also be not paralyzed. I think historically, my reputation was a little thing could get under my skin for weeks and really preoccupy a lot of my energy, and I think that now I probably feel the discomfort more strongly, but it feels like I feel like I can, it's not like I've mastered this, it's an ongoing project, right? But I feel like I can roll with it better and say, ouch, and then what do I need to do? What else do I need to focus on, right? So does that help, Emily? And if there's any other question about that, I'm happy. I love this topic. I also think it's also worth noting, because as I say it, everything is political, right? So now it's like if you wear a face mask, you're a liberal, and there's something about if we start to use the word like trigger, I think what's hard about what I'm advocating is I'm advocating a both and world where I can get better at taking my emotional responses less personally, and I can also still champion the things that I value. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I don't think, I hope someday we get to a point where it's not like one tribe owns this and one tribe owns that, and we can start to realize humanity is complicated and we're really bad at hearing each other. I think sometimes we have the same values, but very different perspectives on how to arrive at where we want to be. And so we start to it's really easy to gang up and form groups. So talking about exercising our attention, one of the best pieces of advice I got my first silent retreat, 2002, was the teacher said, be careful, make sure you practice more than reading about it. So it's like, for some reason, there's this feeling that if I read about mindfulness, I'll get better at it. It'd be like, if I'm gonna read about playing the piano, right? I'm gonna read about cooking. We really do have to use the books. There's a lot of good books, use them as a resource. But this teacher in particular said to me, if you have a few minutes, practice first and then read, right? If you don't have time to do both, practice instead. So there's that. And this is something I think about a lot. I think we're talking about becoming connoisseurs of ordinary sensation. If I can convince people, if I can make people curious enough to even consider that this is possible. But I like this idea that what we're really doing is not waiting till conditions are perfect to notice we're alive, and that this is a capacity that adults have to reacquire. Something that we did normally as a child, no one would need to tell us, you should feel the sun on your arm because it's good for your amygdala, right? But adults want to be convinced. Now, why should I invest 5 seconds in tasting my food? Why should I hear a bird singing instead of solving my problems? Adults want to be convinced first. But I really think it's more fun when we think of this as, yes, I want something grounded in scientific research, but ultimately I'm going to have to get out there and see the world and hear the world and feel my sensations. And I'm going to have to discover myself that ordinary experiences get richer with this. One little plug here. So I've been doing a group at a retirement home before we couldn't do that anymore, every 2 weeks for just a few months. And I had a really specific agenda in mind that I'm not telling these people what they should do. We're just going to exercise together and discuss it. So, and I'm not going to do tons of explaining why they should do it. And what was so remarkable to me is how many of these people, and it wasn't a nursing home, it's a retirement center. So in the retired 70s, 80s, living in an apartment, maybe some of them widowed, but how they would keep saying, I'm noticing so many more details when I take a walk, or when I feel the breeze, when I walk my dog, when I'm come down for a meal and someone hurts my feelings. I'm noticing so many more details. I have a way to redirect my attention when I'm awake in the middle of the night. Why did someone not tell me? What have I missed? Why did someone not tell me this when I was younger? Why is it now that I'm hearing about this? I also find it fascinating how stressed out they are. There, people like, oh, someday I'm going to be retired and I'm going to be so relaxed. Are you? Are you working on that now? Because whatever habits you're cultivating now, you're going to bring to your retirement, right? So what I'm suggesting to exercise our attention is simply about coming back to your senses, letting your imagination be in the background for a few seconds once in a while. I like to advocate practicing more than never. There's a lot, if you were just to go to a bookstore and find out what's mindfulness and how often should I do it, they all say do it for 20 minutes. And I say ignore all that, because 20 minutes is based on, when they do research studies, they have to set some variables, right? They have to figure out the dose. But if you're not in a research study, I would suggest you practice for more than 0 seconds a day and see how hard that is, because it's hard to remember to come out of your imagination and hear the car go by, or a bird sing, or feel the temperature, because we're so busy fixing the world in our minds, right? So more than never is a really great place to start. My bio says I've been practicing every day since whatever, 2002. That means formal timed practice. I stumbled into a yoga class, very naive, burned out social worker, saying, I think I need to take better care of myself. I dabbled from 95 until I naively went on that silent retreat. So I am a fan of dabbling, and I actually think it's a huge part of the process is, if you try to meditate for 20 minutes a day, you're going to give up in 2 days. But if you just start to get more engaged in your senses, secretly sneaking it in, then you're starting to set the stage for maybe a little bit more practice, and we can talk about that. So I'm checking my time here. I think we're good. I'm going to take just like 1 minute to do an exercise. So see if you can find, I got to set my timer, see if you can find a sound in your environment to listen to closely. I should have told the people who were doing the 20-minute exercise that we passed that mark. Maybe you already noticed that. Find a sound in the environment, give it your attention for a handful of seconds, and then either repeat that same sound, listening to that same sound again, or find another sound. And for 1 minute, see if you can find a sound, listen closely, and repeat. Your eyes can be open or closed. Your posture really doesn't matter. You don't have to try to stop thinking, just get curious about hearing. Okay, that's 1 minute of trying to decide again and again to hear. That's what it feels like to exercise your attention using hearing. Here's a project, a research study done by Judd Brewer at Yale, where he was using real-time neurofeedback to help people clarify what it is we're exercising, how to exercise. So this represents 4 runs of a test where they ask the person to notice the sensations of breathing. The red line indicates their default mode networks engaged, meaning their brain activity means they're thinking, problem solving, planning. Different parts of the brain are firing together. And the blue lines indicate that there's an awareness of feeling the sensations of breathing. So this person actually, by the 3rd run, was thinking more. And he saw this result, this instant feedback, and said, I think something's wrong with your machine. It's not measuring correctly because I'm thinking about my breath. And they said, then he realized, oh, you're asking me to feel my breath, not think about it. So I love this because in self-correcting, he sees in the first instance, the 4th instance, right, that he was able to take that information and instead really tune into the sensations of breathing instead of thinking about it. It's a really, it's a big challenge in what are we paying attention to. So just as with physical fitness, there can, the way I look at physical fitness, anything you do to start moving your body more counts. And that can be getting a few more steps a day, right? Or it could be joining a gym. It could be training for a challenging event, like a 5K, 10K, half marathon. Same goes for attentional exercise. It can just be pausing more than never. It can be adding those pauses to tasks, say unloading the dishwasher, something you're going to be doing anyway. Or you can also start to use timed practice to strengthen those pauses, meaning you set aside maybe a minute or 2 or 5 to practice what's it like to hear sounds for 3 minutes in the morning, and then throughout the day kind of noticing occasionally what's it like to hear a sound for a few seconds. So you can really design your own approach to this, and anything counts along the way. The end of the scale on mindfulness is going to these like several days in a row where all you're doing is practicing, and that's not required. I love it. It's not required. I find it hugely beneficial. It's not a spa vacation. And I actually think that what we're living in right now is kind of like a meditation retreat that nobody signed up for. You're discovering all our ways of reacting to things. But the researcher Ellen Langer at MIT, she says that just noticing new things puts you in the present. I love this idea of this pausing counts. Just pausing to notice any sensation you see or hear or feel counts as attention exercise. So we can attach it to something we're already doing. What's it like to take something that doesn't require a lot of thinking, eating a meal, having a cup of coffee, unloading the dishwasher, folding the laundry, and just decide I'm going to use this, I'm going to do double duty. Walking the dog, I'm going to do this task and I'm going to engage my senses as I do it. Right now we've got the opportunity, we have this kind of obsession with hand washing and trying not to touch. I just this morning took a walk actually, and I walked up over to a parking garage downtown to see the view from the top of it. And it's like I encountered a doorknob. When's the last time, I don't remember the last time I encountered a doorknob. So I was very aware my left hand is now tainted and I can't touch anything until I get home. And then I'm suddenly making this game of what's it like to not touch my face, which suddenly feels like something I want to do. But if you take anything we do on autopilot, like washing our hands or this impulse to touch your face, if you disrupt that, then that can be your attentional fitness exercise. That can be your thing. Touching your face is really interesting. We sort of all just gave up, right? Oh, it's too hard, I'm going to give up. But this is actually a really excellent one because learning to not touch your face is a process. It doesn't come instantly. We've been doing this our whole lives. And I really think it only matters after we've touched something where we've now suddenly put ourselves in some kind of risk. We have to wash, like you go to the grocery store, don't touch your face. But what you'll notice is first you're just going to do it, autopilot. And that is the beginning of starting to change a habit. You do it autopilot, then you start to disrupt that. And then you start to catch yourself getting ready to do it. And let it be days and weeks before that starts to become a new response. trying to disrupt that automaticity. And then I mentioned that timed practice, that's where you're just setting a timer. There's tons of apps to support this, but picking a sensation, setting a timer, and just to the best of your ability, seeing if you can collect a few data samples of that sensation during that allotted time. And I'm not suggesting that you try to pay attention to everything all the time. In fact, I say more often than zero, gradually working up to this idea of, can I limit my thinking and worrying and problem solving and sleeping and unconsciousness and numbing and distracting? Can I limit that to 23 hours and 45 minutes a day as a long-term goal? Can that start to be where I shoot? Can I have 15 minutes as my someday, I'm going to have 15 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be all at once, where I'm taking a break from that automatic pull of my imagination. So I'm just realizing I have too much content for our time, but I'm going to keep going, and maybe we'll pause here at the end of this segment. So, and I also want to just stress that I do not see mindfulness as a replacement for things. It's not a replacement for anything, really. Anything you're currently doing to get support, mental health support, physical exercise, the kinds of self-care you're already engaged in, I just think that this is a boost for anything you're doing. So if you're seeing a therapist, but you start paying attention to your sensations, your emotions more, you're going to start noticing kind of a impact in your ability to have effective conversations about your problem solving. That's one way to think about it. So let me see. I'm going to try to decide how much to try to cover. We have until 10:15, so I'm just going to try to hit on a couple things and maybe kind of move quickly through what I have instead of elaborating, and maybe that'll give us time to have discussion. So in addition to pausing, task-related practice, and this is on the handout, these things are on the handout as well, and timed practice, there's these ideas of how do I consciously consume information. So we've got Michael Pollan's book where he says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. But Clay Johnson came out with a book that says, he steals this idea and says, can we seek information, not too much, and mostly facts? So I think we can also bring this kind of curiosity to deciding not just autopilot, but how much information do I want to consume in a day? Maybe I could want to shoot for 10% less, or how much less information could I have in my life to feel like I'm a little better off? Especially right now, how much information, how much do I need to really read every day about what's happening? It's mostly speculation at this point anyway. And then for the librarian, idea of information literacy, helping people recognize that not everything you hear is worth spreading. I like this model from Mike Caulfield, that it's an acronym SIFT, meaning that when you have some information that you want to spread, you stop. And I think this is actually a really interesting place to notice, what is it about this that makes me want to share it? It's usually something emotional. It's funny, or it's shocking, or it's surprising, and I want to share it. But maybe could I investigate it a little before I pass it along? And also, maybe as cheesy as I get, this idea of, while things are so uncertain, not neglecting the idea of being on the lookout for things that there are to be grateful for. I read a book recently, or I started reading a book recently by Ross Gay called The Book of Delights, where he just collected things every day that were surprising and that delighted him. And it started to really encourage me to kind of consider playing with that in this way as well. So quickly, how does mindfulness build resilience, which is just our ability to recover and adapt through challenge, to actually maybe grow in response to the challenges we're facing? It's kind of like a vaccine. Counterintuitive, but a little safe amount of dose, where I'm exposing myself, let's say, to discomfort in a safe way, starts to develop my capacity for recovering, for responding, for realizing I have the capacity to respond to discomfort. Mindfulness practice also helps us persist through obstacles. We pick something to notice, and we keep coming back again and again. It's simple to do one repetition of noticing, but it's not easy to sustain that over time. Coming back and again, time and again, strengthens our ability to focus and decide what to notice. And we can also get better at deciding what's relevant at any given moment and what to allow to be in the background. So we actually can focus on a task that's challenging and maybe save Amazon or Facebook to later. And I think it's empowering to realize I can handle my unpleasant feelings more. I can be more comfortable with discomfort outside my comfort zone. To me, this is a better representation of what mindfulness is, not that I'm sitting on a cushion, but that I'm doing something challenging, but I'm paying attention and I'm rolling with the changing conditions and circumstances. Also, there's like a secret benefit of mindfulness. Paying attention in the way I'm describing has this way of putting you in touch with your own humanity, the challenges of having attention that wants to wander, that tends to notice bad news over good news, notices the challenge of feeling unpleasant emotions. It starts to plant little seeds of empathy and compassion. We start to recognize the humanity we share with other people. And I think I'm going to skip over the emotional granularity, other than to just say there's a lot of really interesting research being done by Susan David, by Lisa Feldman Barrett, about how things that they're learning recently, the more granularity we can have about our emotions, the more equipped we are to make more effective decisions instead of just defaulting to our knee-jerk reaction to our emotions. And that really just involves in collecting more data samples. What's it like to feel your feelings for a few seconds? Not the story of your feelings, but where do you feel it in your body? What flavors of emotion are you aware of in your body? Getting intimately familiar with the physical aspects of your feelings as they're playing out, pleasant and unpleasant feelings. Noticing the intensity. I'm angry, but am I angry on a scale from 1 to 10? How strong is that anger? I think about if I get an email and I start to automatically, pushes my buttons and I'm starting to send a reply. If my anger level is like over a 6, I think I might want to put that in a draft folder. It served me well. I think maybe you guys can relate to that impulse to pause and wait and see if I still feel so strongly this afternoon or tomorrow morning before I send it. And also, I think it's surprisingly interesting to notice whether the emotion is staying the same. Am I really sad all day, or does it kind of go in waves of intensity throughout the day? Does it come and go and change? Or even as I notice it, does it change? So my argument is we don't have to become better people. We're already mindful. We could exercise our ability to pay attention. And instead of hoping that we're going to rise to the level of some challenge or expectation, I think the reality is we're going to always fall to the level of what we've been practicing, what we've been habitually doing. So if we habitually avoid uncertainty and discomfort in a variety of ways, we're going to fall back on those when things are more intense and challenging. So that's my talk, and I'm going to skip this last pause so we can check in with people and see if they have questions. Do we have any questions? And let me know if you go. Yeah.
Over to Tiffany, because I have to go to another meeting at 10 o'clock. So she's now your handler. Good luck.
Okay. Okay, Tiffany, thank you. Thanks, Rebecca.
Sure. We do have a question in chat. Can you explain equanimity a little more, please?
Yeah. So equanimity is a quality of relating to a sensation that is neutral. So it's in contrast to what we typically, our typical response is if something is unpleasant, an unpleasant sensation, we try to push it away, try to get rid of it. And if there's a pleasant sensation, that we try to hold on to it, we'll make it last longer or intensify it. So in equanimity is a skill of attention. And I'm thinking as I'm talking, because I think someone's got the hand out, because I don't think I said it in this talk, but I love this word. It's this, when I'm noticing a sensation for a few seconds without trying to change it, I'm cultivating the attentional skill of equanimity. And what I find so empowering, that study of Carnegie Mellon was basically a study of, does equanimity help reduce stress, right? What I love about it is I don't have to accept the situation or condone what caused it or forgive anyone. It's literally, can I feel this? My arm is cold. Can I let it be cold for a few seconds? Not forever. It doesn't mean I don't intervene in general, but it's an attentional skill that I can practice cultivating so that I can start to bring this quality of relating to what's happening, what's playing out in real time right now, what it's like to see or hear or feel. And for a handful of seconds, not push or pull against it, not try to change it. So that if you think about one push-up isn't going to get me very far, but several push-ups a day or every other day starts to literally change the composition of my body. What's happening there when we have this neutral response to a sensation is we're allowing the part of our prefrontal cortex that can regulate a response, that can tell the difference between this is a threat, you need to protect yourself, versus this is a discomfort, but it's not life-threatening. So you're actually allowing your brain to do what it's capable of, which is taking in data without making discomfort actually worse or undercutting the satisfaction or fulfillment you get from pleasant sensations. It's not it's a capacity that changes how you relate to your life in real time. Is that a useful explanation, or does anyone have more question about that?
Yes, thank you. She says that works. A question, okay. Did you say that you have a blog, and can we get the link to that to share?
So if you go to my website that I got on the screen right now, and the blog is on there, and I also have a newsletter on there. I also, since we're promoting me, my Art of Attention podcast is on wcbe.org, but it's also on several of the places you can get podcasts. So if you go to my website, though, you'll find out all about stuff that I've got going on. And I have a bi-monthly newsletter because I'm sort of like, I don't want to bug people. So I'm sticking to this every other month, letting people know what's going on.
And we can send out this link by email afterwards, so don't worry.
Perfect.
What other questions do we have?
I'm also interested in folks having anything that they find surprising, that they disagree, push back on, or enjoy, any takeaway. Just, if we were together, I would look you in the eye more. Maybe I'll stop sharing and see you.
Yeah, feel free to do that. There we are.
Anybody have any observation or questions? Or
question just came in the chat. Can you practice mindfulness while doing other things like driving, waiting in line, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So I really encourage a couple different things. Practice more than never. Keep it to yourself, like it's a secret spy mission. People don't want to hear about it. I'm just supposed to be honest. So the idea is, if I'm in the grocery store, I think it's shockingly empowering to decide, instead of, this is what I do by default. I go to the line at the grocery store, right? And I'm like, why is this line slower than the other lines? I need to figure out the logistics of the grocery store. I've got to right the wrongs. But what if I instead decide, I'm just going to feel my legs. I'm going to hear the sounds. It's fascinating, the sounds in the grocery store. It's like this stew of sounds coming from all different directions. Little piped in music and a lot of murmuring of human voices, right? Pick a sensation to savor for a few seconds. I swear you will not regret it, but you have to forego that sense of I'm in control, I need to solve the world, I need to fix myself and everyone, so someday I'll be comfortable and certain. What if I just feel, it's sort of like having an affair. Oh my God, there's all this relaxation in my legs, and I'm doing it right here, and no one notices. It's only for me. It's mine. So it's like a way of relating to yourself, where you're savoring your life as it is. You can do it. You said driving the car. This is one thing I really encourage. We drive, but we don't see the road. because we're thinking. And we know this because every once in a while we get there and we don't remember getting there because we tune out the world to solve the problem. What am I going to say to the president when he asks me my opinion on the current situation? How do I convince my political other that I'm right and they're wrong? I can't worry about the other cars in front of me. I've got things to do. But what if we said, I'm going to drive from here to there, and this whole time I'm going to keep bringing my attention out, and I'm going to just see what's out my windshield. I might even turn off the radio or a podcast and actually see what's it like. And this is actually really amazing to see how your attention will be pulled back in again and again, and you'll gently steer it back out to seeing the road in front of you. Imagine living in a country where people see the road or other cars in front of them, or hear, or look for pedestrians, right? So I also think that there's some natural tendency. Our brains are wired to take us off that mode and pull us back out. We see a red light, we can do it. We can come out. So I think part of what attentional fitness is not waiting for red lights, not waiting for a crisis, not waiting for something that insists, but practicing more than never, deciding what to notice. And it's usually just that ordinary sensory experience that you would think, this is not entertaining enough for me to notice. And the payoff very quickly is ordinary things start to seem really fascinating and rich.
Interesting.
So yeah, anything you do can be converted to a exercise. If you find one that can't, email me. Yeah.
I find I'm more paying attention to that sort of thing when I'm doing a very mindless thing like housework or whatever.
Yeah. You think about monastic practices. You sign up, I'm going to go to Japan and I'm going to go to a Zen monastery. And guess what? They're not going to reveal the secrets of the universe. They're going to say, here's a rake, go rake these rocks for 20 years, right? And then what they're secretly doing is hoping that you will realize how you relate to whatever you're doing becomes your life, and how you relate to your life, right? This is actually, I'm giving you the secrets that they don't tell the Zen monks. They just let them be confused for a few decades and hope they figure it out. But this is what they're really hoping that they'll notice, the kind of things that we're discussing here today.
A question in chat, how do you interject mindfulness into library programs, other specific programs like you were talking about the workshop at the retirement community? What does that look like? How can we incorporate this?
Well, one thing is like maybe curating a list of the books. There's so many resources out there right now. So, and maybe having a conversation about, I like the idea of introducing this not as a religious practice, which is part of the battle, right? I am not a Buddhist. I'm not even a vegetarian, right? I'm just practicing paying attention. I think the challenge right now and the opportunity is getting people to realize this is a capacity builder. And what are the books that really build a strong case and that inspire people to pay attention differently? I think a library is a great place to offer some kind of instruction, because it's just attentiveness, really, when it gets down to it. It's sort of like offering a thing where, what's it like to pay attention to your senses? How does that impact? So I guess in an educational program, something along those lines. Also, I think there's an opportunity with things like information literacy, this idea of, I think this is huge. Actually, I think librarians, we could do a lot more, right? It's not just facts. We're guilty of this. Fact check, fact check, fact check. It's not about facts. It's about emotional response. If you look out in the world, people are responding to what resonates. I'm fascinated. It's like, I make my decisions. If I really pay attention, my decisions are based on my feelings, and I build a logical case for them after. And then I look at other people and the decisions that they make, and I hold them to their logic instead of considering the emotion behind it, right? Where I live, who I'm in a relationship with, how I parent, it feels like this is the right thing. And I think when we're so perplexed by other people, and we're so perplexed by how they navigate information, we're leaving out this part. We have a blind spot about this. It's about emotion, what seems true, what feels true. How do we educate people that just because something feels true doesn't make it true? So I feel like there's something about information literacy that incorporates real-time emotional awareness. There's never been a better time to explore this with a lot of the research that I mentioned. Lisa Feldman Barrett, How Emotions Are Made. Really interesting stuff that she's realizing there that I feel has to be connected to this topic. Does that resonate, you guys, or does that is that helpful at all?
I think you make a good point about the intersection of facts and emotion. People tend to approach them as though they're opposite sides of like a long continuum with emotion on one side and fact on the other. But yeah, I find that a very interesting approach, because logicking people into, as anyone who has social media knows, that doesn't work.
Right, right. I was even, I don't know if this is probably stepping into thin ice, but someone on Facebook, a friend this last week, was saying, I'm washing boxes that come into my house. I'm wiping everything down because I'm afraid that it's going to have the virus on it. And this is like an intelligent person. And from my read from the facts, I think that everything I've read says it's okay. What you're bringing into the house is probably fine. But she said, are you guys wiping everything down too? And then everybody responded in support in a way that made it sound like science. So like liberal, educated people basically saying, yeah, I feel better if I wipe down the Amazon box. But there's no science there. And I thought, what a rich opportunity for us to understand the people who see the world differently than we do, because they do that too. They feel that their worldview makes sense to them in spite of the lack of any evidence for it. So I'm really interested in not just trying to convert my political other, but trying to see what do I know about myself and my own humanity, my own blind spots, that can inform how I recognize the humanity in people who have come at a different conclusion. This also just reminds me, if you guys have Annie Duke on your radar, she's the poker player. Her book is called Thinking in Bets, How to Make Decisions When You Don't Have Enough Information. Highly recommend it. I feel like it's really related to information literacy as well.
Is that on the handout or resource list, or?
No, that's just a random association.
Okay.
It's Annie Duke, Thinking in Bets. It's really for
I'll put it
decision making with uncertainty. Yeah. So interesting. I think she has a new book coming out soon. Really compelling psychology of how we have, and one of the things that really stands out with her work is making a difference between a decision and a result, evaluating those two separately, and also the importance of being able to back off our uncertainty even a little. So instead of, I know the answer, it's, I'm 80% sure that my stance is correct. If I'm 80%, I'm giving you a little room to still, I'm open for being convinced. I've done some research, I'm 80% confident, let's navigate the uncertainty together instead of demonizing each other for having different conclusions.
So the comment in the chat is the role of libraries in this process, and is it about being aware of how our community is feeling and responding to that?
So I would say a couple things. I want to take my time here. One of the most important things is, like, I'm going to put this in terms of parents often ask me, how do I help my kids be more mindful? And the answer is not, I don't think what they want to hear is, you practice and it impacts your kids. And I think a librarian who has a kind of self-awareness where there's a little more emotional, not the kind of emotional like I know my preferences, but I'm feeling afraid right now, right? I feel like a librarian like that can be very powerful. I think that any public service, I jump right from there to a police officer, but I think there's a kind of a fine line sometimes in the library where if I'm able to de-escalate myself, I can de-escalate people I serve. And what would the world be like? One of the things I like to remind people is, if you de-escalate someone, I can pretty confidently guarantee it's never going to go viral. There's not going to be news that goes around the world that says this librarian calmed someone down by calming herself down or calming himself, right? But if you escalate someone and something terrible happens, it's going to be literally across the planet today. But this is something I feel like we have to hold on to, is when we start to get so hopeless about the world, is that we have a very skewed view of the world, because it has to be sensational to hold the world's attention. And I'm just interested in remembering that sometimes while we are trying to sort things out in our mind, how do I fix the country or the world, when my actual power is how do I relate to myself and the people close to me and the people in my neighborhood and the people in my community? How do I have an impact where I can actually have an impact? So I don't know if that's way too general for the question, but I think a librarian who realizes the benefit of focus, the ability to decide what to notice and what to let to be in the background, the ability to become a connoisseur of sensation, including emotion and discomfort, and realizing that the capacity for empathy is trainable and can increase with practice, I think can be really valuable things to cultivate in themselves. And whether the recipients of that know that that's what's happening, I think maybe doesn't matter, but we can certainly, as we investigate these things for ourselves, we become a resource to people who are then looking for something similar. And I do think attentional skills are going to become as recognizably important as physical health. Our physical health is important. We know a mental health and emotional health is important, but attentional capacities, I think it's really relevant to what we're doing, trying to supply people with resources in the world.
That's an excellent point. Sometimes if we have success in, as you said, de-escalating or handling a situation, it appears to be a non-event when in fact it was a success.
That's exactly this like everyone's so angry now, our overreaction. You guys, we're flattening the curve. It would be worse. But it's sort of like, I think the things I've always been drawn to in my life, if you do it well, it's an investment up front that's hard to attribute to the outcome, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes an invisible thing. Yes.
Totally.
We are at about 1/4 after. So does anybody have any final questions? What other thoughts do we have?
I'm also curious because the few faces I can see I can't read. Is this a thumbs up day? Did we like it, or is it yay? Thanks, guys. I appreciate your attention, and I'm thrilled to be invited. So let me be a resource. Get in touch with me if you have anything I can provide.
Yeah, thank you, and we will certainly get the recording and handouts out to everybody shortly here. So
really helpful.
Yeah, thank you for attending. All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Tiffany. Thanks, everybody.
And I will go ahead and stop the recording here, I think.